The Ancient City, Book 5, Chapter 2, The Roman Conquest. At first it appears very surprising that among the 1,000 cities of Greece and Italy, one was found capable of subduing all the others. Yet this great event is due to the ordinary causes that determine the course of human affairs. The wisdom of Rome consisted, like all wisdom, in profiting by the favorable circumstance that fell in its way. We can distinguish two periods in the work of the Roman conquest. One corresponds to the time when the old municipal spirit was still strong. It was then that Rome had the greatest number of obstacles to surmount. The second belonged to the time when the municipal spirit was much weakened. Conquest then became easy and was accomplished rapidly. 1. The origin and population of Rome. The origin of Rome and the composition of its people are worthy of remark. They explain the particular character in its policy and the exceptional part that fell to it from the beginning in the midst of the other cities. The Roman race was strangely mixed. The principal element was Latin and originally from Alba. But these Albans themselves, according to traditions which no criticism authorizes us to reject, were composed of two associated but not confounded populations. One was the aboriginal race, real Latins. The other was of foreign origin and was said to have come from Troy with Aeneas, the priest founder. It was, to all appearance, not numerous, but was influential from the worship and the institutions which it had brought with it. These Albans, a mixture of two races, founded Rome on a spot where another city had already been built, Pallanteum, founded by the Greeks. Now the population of Pallanteum remained in the new city, and the rites of the Greek worship were preserved there. There was also, where the capital afterwards stood, a city which was said to have been founded by Hercules, the families of which remained distinct from the rest of the Roman population during the entire continuance of the Republic. Thus, at Rome, all races were associated and mingled. There were Latins, Trojans, and Greeks. There were, a little later, Sabines and Etruscans. Of the several hills, the Palatine was the Latin city, after having been the city of Evander. The Capitoline, after having been the dwelling place of the companions of Hercules, became the home of the Sabines of Tatius. The Quirinal received its name from the Sabine Quirites, or from the Sabine god Quirinus. The Coelian hill appears to have been inhabited from the beginning by Etruscans. Rome did not seem to be a single city. It appeared like a confederation of several cities, each one of which was attached by its origin to another confederation. It was the center where the Latins, Etruscans, Sabellians, and Greeks met. Its first king was a Latin, the second a Sabine, the fifth was, we are told, the son of a Greek, the sixth was an Etruscan. Its language was composed of the most diverse elements. The Latin predominated, but Sabellian roots were numerous, and more Greek radicals were found in it than any other of the dialects of central Italy. As to its name, no one knew to what language that belonged. According to some, Rome was a Trojan word, according to others, a Greek word. There are reasons for believing it to be Latin, but some of the ancients thought it to be Etruscan. The names of Roman families also attest a great diversity of origin. In the time of Augustus, there were still some 50 families who, by ascending the series of their ancestors, arrived at the companions of Aeneas. Others claimed to be descendants of the Arcadian Evander, and from time immemorial the men of these families wore upon their shoes, as a distinctive sign, a small silver crescent. The Patrician and Pinarian families were descended from those who were called the companions of Hercules, and their descent was proved by the hereditary worship of that god. The Tulli, Quincti, and Servili came from Alba after the conquest of that city. Many families joined to their name a surname which recalled their foreign origin. There were thus the Sulpici Camerini, and the Comini Arunci, the Sicini Sabini, the Claudi Regilenses, and the Aquilii Tusci. The Noscian family was Trojan, the Aureli were Sabines, the Cassili came from Praeneste, and the Octavi were originally from Velitrae. The effect of this mixing of the most diverse nations was that from the beginning Rome was related to all the peoples that it knew. It would call itself Latin with the Latins, Sabine with the Sabines, Etruscan with the Etruscans, and Greek with the Greeks. Its national worship was also an assemblage of several quite different worships, each one of which attached it to one of these nations. It had the Greek worship of Evander and Hercules, and boasted of possessing the Trojan Palladium. Its penates were in the Latin city of Lavinium, and it adopted from the beginning the Sabine worship of the god Consus. Another Sabine god, Quirinus, was so firmly established at Rome that he was associated with Romulus, its founder. It had also the gods of the Etruscans, and their festivals, and their augurs, and even their sacerdotal insignia. At a time when no one had the right to take part in the religious festivals of a nation unless he belonged by birth to that nation, the Roman had this incomparable advantage of being able to take part in the Latin holidays, the Sabine festivals, the Etruscan festivals, and the Olympic Games. Now, religion was a powerful bond. When two cities had a single worship, they called themselves relations. They were required to regard themselves as allies and to aid each other. In ancient times, men knew of no other union than that which religion established. Rome, therefore, preserved with great care whatever could serve as an evidence of this precious relationship with other nations. To the Latins, it presented its traditions of Romulus. To the Sabines, its legend of Tarpeia and Tatius. To the Greeks, it quoted the old hymns which it had preserved in honor of Evander's mother, hymns which Romans no longer understood, but which they persisted in singing. They also preserved the recollection of Aeneas with the greatest care, for if they could claim relationship with the Peloponnesians through Evander, they were related through Aeneas to more than 30 cities, scattered through Italy, Sicily, Greece, Thrace, and Asia Minor, all having Aeneas for a founder, or being colonies of cities founded by him, all having, consequently, a common worship with Rome. We can see in the wars which they waged in Sicily against Carthage, and in Greece against Philip, what advantage they derived from this ancient relationship. The Roman population was, then, a mixture of several races. Its worship was an assemblage of several worships, and its national hearth an association of several hearths. It was almost the only city whose municipal religion was not isolated from all the others. It was related to all Italy and all Greece. There was hardly a people that it could not admit to its hearth. 2. First aggrandizement of Rome, B.C. 753 to 350. During the period when the municipal religion was everywhere powerful, it governed the policy of Rome. We are told that the first act of the new city was to seize some Sabine women, a legend which appears very improbable when we reflect on the sanctity of marriage among the ancients. But we have seen above that the municipal religion forbade marriage between persons of different cities unless these two cities had a common origin or a common worship. The first Romans had the right of intermarriage with Alba, from which they originally came, but not with their other neighbors, the Sabines. What Romulus wished to obtain first of all was not a few women. It was the right of intermarriage, that is to say, the right of contracting regular relations with the Sabine population. For this purpose, a religious bond must be established between them. He therefore adopted the worship of the Sabine god Consus, and celebrated his festival. Tradition adds that during this festival he carried off the women. If he had done this, the marriages could not have been celebrated according to the rites, since the first and most necessary act of the marriage was the traditio in manum, that is to say, the giving away of the daughter by the father. Romulus would have failed of his object. But the presence of the Sabines and their families at the religious ceremony, and their participation in the sacrifice, established between the two nations a bond such that the connubium could no longer be refused. There was no need of a seizure. The right of intermarriage was a natural consequence of the festival. And the historian Dionysius, who consulted ancient documents and hymns, assures us that the Sabines were married according to the most solemn rites, which is confirmed by Plutarch and Cicero. It is worthy of remark that the result of the first effort of the Romans was to throw down the barriers which the municipal religion had placed between two neighboring nations. No similar legend relative to Etruria has come down to us, but it appears quite certain that Rome had the same relations with that country as with Latium and the Sabines. The Romans therefore had the address to unite themselves by worship and by blood with all the nations around them. They took care to have the connubium with all the cities, and what proves that they well understood the importance of this bond is that they would not permit other cities, their subjects, to have it among themselves. Rome then entered upon a long series of its wars. The first was against the Sabines of Tatius. It was terminated by a religious and political alliance between these two little nations. It next made war upon Alba. The historians say that the Romans dared to attack this city, though they were a colony from it. It was precisely because they were a colony from Alba that they judged it necessary to destroy that city. Indeed, every metropolis exercised a religious supremacy over its colonies, and religion then had so great an influence that while Alba remained standing, Rome could be only a dependent city, and her progress would be forever arrested. After the destruction of Alba, Rome was no longer content to remain a colony, but claimed to take the rank of a metropolis, by inheriting the rights and the religious supremacy which up to that time Alba had exercised over the 30 colonies of Latium. The Romans sustained long wars to obtain the presidency of the sacrifice at the Feriae Latinae. This was a means of acquiring the single kind of superiority and dominion which was understood at that time. They built at home a temple to Diana. They obliged the Latins to come and offer sacrifices there, and even attracted the Sabines to it. By this means they habituated these two nations to share with them, under their presidency, the festivals, the prayers, and the sacred flesh of the victims. Rome thus united them under her religious supremacy. Rome was the only city that understood how to augment her population by war. The Romans pursued a policy unknown to the rest of the Greco-Italian world. They annexed all that they conquered. They brought home the inhabitants of captured cities and gradually made Romans of them. At the same time, they sent colonists into the conquered countries, and in this manner spread Rome everywhere. For their colonists, while forming distinct cities, in a political point of view, preserved a religious community with the metropolis. And this was enough to compel the colonies to subordinate their policy to that of Rome, to obey her, and to aid her in all her wars. One of the remarkable peculiarities of the policy of Rome was that she attracted to her all the worships of the neighboring cities. She obtained possession of a Juno from Veii, a Jupiter from Praeneste, a Minerva from Falerii, a Juno from Lanuvium, a Venus from the Samnites, and many others that we do not know. For it was the custom of the Romans, says one of the ancients, to take home the religions of the conquered cities. Sometimes they distributed them among the Gentes, and sometimes they gave them a place in their national religion. Montesquieu praises the Romans for a refinement of skillful policy in not having imposed their gods upon the conquered nations. But that would have been contrary to their ideas, and to those of all the ancients. Rome conquered the gods of the vanquished and did not give them hers. She kept her protectors for herself, and even labored to increase the number. She tried to possess more worships and more tutelary gods than any other city. As, moreover, these worships and gods were, for the most part, taken from the conquered, Rome was placed by them in religious communion with all the surrounding nations. The ties of a common origin, the possession of the connubium, that of the presidency of the Feriae Latinae, that of the vanquished gods, the right which they pretended to have of sacrificing at Olympia and at Delphi, were so many means by which the Romans prepared their dominion. Like all the cities, Rome had her municipal religion, the source of her patriotism, but she was the only city which made this religion serve for her aggrandizement. Whilst other cities were isolated by their religion, Rome had the address or the good fortune to employ hers to draw everything to herself, and to dominate over all.